every NFL team's worst mistake of the last 5 years. Now, the NFL is a league where half the teams are actively trying to win, and the other half are trying to find new and creative ways to light money on fire. Over the last 5 years, we've seen every flavor of disaster. Trades that aged worse than milk. Contracts that should come with a court summons. Court summons that come with quarterbacks, draft picks, and plays that made fan bases consider joining a new religion. So let's go through every team's worst mistake in the last half decade, because pain makes for the most clickable YouTube videos. We did a video like this 4 years ago, and I thought it was time for a follow-up. Also, I thought we made that video 5 years ago and didn't realize until we had already written too much of this one. I'm Brendan Perna. This is That's Good Sports. We did it! We hit 775,000 subs before the 2025 football season started. I challenged you to help me get there, and you showed up. Guys, thank you. Thank you. I achieved so few of my goals. It was nice to finally hit one. Speaking of not meeting their goals, the Arizona Cardinals. Well, they once looked at Cliff Kingsbury's air raid offense and Steve Keim's draft resume of busts, arrests, and linebackers playing out of position and thought, yeah, these are the guys we should lock up until 2027.
I'm super excited for him and for us because I think we've got a very bright future.
Naturally, both were gone a year later after going 4-13. Thank God Kyler Murray is only 5'10", because that makes it physically impossible for him to be their biggest mistake. Atlanta decided in 2024 to throw $180 million at Kirk Cousins' surgically repaired Achilles tendon. Then, for reasons only God and Arthur Blank understand, they drafted Michael Penix Jr. in round 1 anyway. Cousins lasted 14 starts, got benched, and now the Falcons are paying him $85 million to sit perfectly still like a wax figure while they see what they have in Mr. Penis Jr.
What you tell me?
Who in hindsight looks like the smartest move the Falcons made in the last 5 years, possibly. The Ravens, who usually only make smart, boring moves, dropped $15 million guaranteed on Odell Beckham Jr. in 2023 because reasons? OBJ hadn't been elite since Game of Thrones was still good, and shocker, he gave them 565 yards, 3 TDs, and a half season of ankle issues. $15 million is a lot to pay for a guy when you already invested heavy draft capital in Rashad Bateman and Zay Flowers. The Buffalo Bills' genius idea was, oh God, this hurts. Von Miller. In his $120 million 6-year deal.
Which is a lot.
2 fully guaranteed years, a window to try and terrorize Patrick Mahomes. Instead, his ACL exploded, he got suspended, and the Bills are paying $45 million for 4 sacks, and Buffalo has fallen twice to Kansas City when it counted the most. I love Vaughn, and I would have given him $120 million as well. I just think Buffalo could have spread that money around to, address one of their other issues.
You know, I feel like I have a little Buffalo Bill in my blood for a long time.
The Panthers said, you know what'll fix this team? Trading away DJ Moore and multiple first-rounders for quarterback Bryce Young. Now, I'm not saying Bryce Young is their biggest mistake, but I am saying what they gave up to acquire him was. If they waited just 1 year, they could have drafted Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels with the first overall pick. Would they have been the worst team had they not drafted Bryce Young? Who knows? What I do know, what is otherworldly levels of stupidity, is to trade away a first-round draft pick that turns into the #1 overall draft pick for another team. The craziest part is we all laughed at the Texans for winning that meaningless game against the Colts that cost them the #1 pick, and they still ended up with C.J. Stroud, who has gotten Houston to the postseason twice and won a couple games there as well. We're all rooting for Bryce Young, but Jesus, I'd take Stroud, Jaden, Bo Nix, Drake May, and probably Michael Penix over him right now. The good news, Carolina, is you're in a rare position where one of your biggest mistakes could still be your franchise QB.
One thing I always travel with is like a little travel size lotion.
Today's episode is sponsored by Element. Element is a zero-sugar electrolyte drink mix and sparkling water aimed at helping you stay hydrated and hitting optimal sodium levels. You know what they say when life hands you lemons? Turn it into a lemonade salt flavor of Element drink mix for the summer and then watch it become so popular you make it permanent. That's the saying, right? Well, that's right. The lemonade salt will continue to be available at Element along with all their other flavors. Next to chili mango, it's the flavor I've been drinking the most lately. And you might recall I knew about Element because my mom drinks it. Well, she texted me the other day asking if I could save her a box of the chili mango because she stumbled upon one of Element's chicken wing recipes that called for a chili mango packet. Each pack has a perfect dose of electrolytes, free of sugar, artificial colors, all the stuff you don't want in your body but definitely want on your chicken wings. It's been oddly humid here in Colorado, which means I've been sweating through my workout clothes in disgusting fashion. And when you sweat, you need to replenish your fluids and your electrolytes. Element is how I do it. And right now, anyone who uses my link can get a new sample pack that features 2 packs of their most popular flavors. That's 4 flavors, 8 total samples for you to try, and it's for new or existing customers when you use my link and make a purchase at Element. Chicago's worst moment was not drafting Justin Fields. The process there wasn't bad, it just didn't work out. No, it was actually trading the 32nd overall pick for Chase Claypool, a wide receiver whose highlight reel in Chicago was him blocking air. He gave them 191 yards in 10 games, then got traded for basically next to nothing. The Steelers turned that pick into Joey Porter Jr., who's already better than half the league's corners. Bringing in Chase Claypool to help Justin Fields as a passer is like getting a Chicago native named Pope so God stops hating your football team. Actually, that might work. It's like bringing in a block of cheese to relieve your severe constipation. I bet Joey Porter doesn't let that Hail Mary happen. And while keeping Matt Eberflus 1 year too many was a big whiff, it did lead to Ben Johnson.
Coming from my favorite guy. Like a little travel-sized lotion.
And ultimately, I think Eberflus's final year in Chicago was a blessing in disguise. Cincinnati. I mean, this one is pretty obvious, right? It was drafting Joe Burrow. The Browns. Oh boy, where do we even start? Nah, here's where we start and where we end, even though it could be a lot of things, really. Cleveland sold its soul, its draft picks, and $230 million fully guaranteed for Deshaun Watson. He's delivered bottom-of-the-barrel quarterback play, an Achilles tear, and a lifetime contract of awkward press conferences. The Texans used those picks to completely rebuild and win back-to-back AFC South titles, while the Browns have one of the ugliest deals in sports history, not just NFL. And the bow on this perfectly wrapped dick in a box is Baker Mayfield looks fucking awesome in Tampa Bay, signing a $100 million contract in 2024, and he's likely going to get an extension after 2025. The Browns have to be the only franchise in NFL history to solve their franchise decades-long quarterback problem and then willingly trade that man away. The good news for Cleveland is when I redo this video in 20 years, this will still be the answer. When I redo this video in 100 fucking years, this will still be the answer. And yeah, I'll still be alive, Cleveland.
Get off my lawn.
I've fallen and I can't get up.
Okay, I'll do a real one for the Bengals now. I had to sell the joke though. I think their biggest mistake is philosophically deciding not to invest in defense to help one of the most potent offenses in the NFL. They let Jesse Bates walk in his prime. Bates had accounted for 10 interceptions, 2 touchdowns, and 7 forced fumbles in 2 seasons with the Falcons since leaving Cincinnati. They will have Trey Hendrickson for all of 2025, but you should be banking on him for the next 2 seasons. Get it the fuck together, Cincinnati, or you're gonna watch Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow's prime go up in smoke. The Cowboys. They shipped Amari Cooper to Cleveland for a 5th rounder because he was too expensive. Then they gave Michael Gallup $62.5 million coming off a torn ACL. Cooper gave the Browns back-to-back 1,100-yard seasons. Gallup gave Dallas one last sigh before retiring. Jerry Jones is rewarded with an 8-part docuseries on Netflix while he chooses not to pay Micah Parsons. What made this worse for Dallas was seeing the Dolphins give up 5 draft picks to acquire Tyreek Hill, including a 2022 first-round pick, a second-round pick, and a 4th-round pick, plus a 4th and 6th-round pick in 2023. And then Davante Adams going to the Raiders for a 1st and 2nd-round pick. So Jerry Jones didn't get close to what Amari Cooper was worth at the time. Jerry Jones' inability to get the right value for Amari Cooper was my answer, until of course Jerry Jones went along and traded Micah Parsons. Now he did get 2 first-round draft picks for Micah, but I think if we're looking forward to the next 5 years, the Micah Parsons trade will be the one we're talking about as the worst move for the Dallas Cowboys.
I hate Jerry Jones! Why are they trading him to a team that has knocked them out of the playoffs in each of the last 3 years?
Jerry World, and all of the Cursed Logo shirts are now available. The new Cursed Logos for 2025 at benchwarmershop.com.
I don't want to do this.
The Chiefs. Hard to say the Chiefs have really done anything wrong over the last 5 years, except for the fact that Patrick Mahomes is colorblind and can't see a white corner in the Super Bowl. But if I gotta pinpoint something for the Chiefs, it's 2 draft picks, Sky Moore and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Clyde's probably the bigger mistake overall, because after Clyde, I believe the next player that was taken was T. Higgins. Then you had Michael Pittman, and just a few picks later, Jonathan Taylor. So I think if the Chiefs could redo that, they would have taken any one of those players to just plug into their insane offense. Sky Moore, the next pick, Trey McBride. Could you imagine replacing Travis Kelce with Trey McBride? And then a few picks after him, offensive lineman who just signed a big contract extension with the Buccaneers, Luke Godecki. I bet the Chiefs would have those 2 back, but I'm glad they can't. You can't have them back, Kansas City, cuz go fuck yourself. Here's another easy one. Denver's Russ era costs 2 firsts, 2 seconds, 3 players, and $245 million for a Russell Wilson extension. 2 years later, Wilson was cut. Sean Payton was throwing shade and pressers, and Seattle was laughing all the way to the playoffs with Charles Cross, Devin Witherspoon, and Boye Mafe. You could make a case that hiring Nathaniel Hackett was just as bad, but at least firing a head coach before his first season is over doesn't result in a bunch of dead cap money. Luckily, the Broncos were smart enough to take their medicine with Russell Wilson, draft and acquire talent in record time, and rebuild their way out of a massive grave and get back to the playoffs in 2024 with, God bless himself, Bo Nix.
God bless Bo Nix!
Detroit got a little too tricky for their own good, down 10 points in the 4th quarter of their NFC divisional round meeting with the Commanders. Instead of letting Jared Goff try and throw him back into the game, they put the ball in the hands of Jameson Williams, who promptly gave the ball right back to Washington and all but iced their incredible 15-2 season. The best news for the Lions is that it was really hard to find a big mistake in the last 5 years. Since firing Matt Patricia, everything has gone well. I was choosing how they managed the game in 2 playoff losses. Ultimately, I picked the Commanders over the 49ers because it wasn't the Lions' fault that Brandon Ayuk made that insane catch, that once-in-a-lifetime grab, and I felt bad blaming their best chance on a Super Bowl appearance all on Josh Reynolds for not catching this ball on 4th and 2, which in my opinion is the most costly drop in Lions history. Green Bay traded Davante Adams to the Raiders, then had 2 firsts in 2022. They used them on Quay Walker and Devontae Wyatt. Wyatt is a rotational guy who they took with George Karlaftis still on the board. When your big Davante Adams replacement plan is let's take a linebacker who tackles trainers, You're stuck with Christian Watson dropping huge passes left and right and always getting hurt. They could have also traded Aaron Rodgers in 2022 for a king's ransom after his second consecutive MVP season. Instead, they gave him a 4-year extension and took on a $40 million dead cap hit when they traded him to the Jets a year later. The good news is the answer is not drafting Jordan Love.
What would you like to say to Jerry? You broke the man's heart.
I ain't got nothing to say. I ain't got nothing to say.
The Texans really traded DeAndre Hopkins, one of the best 3 wideouts alive at the time, for a second-round pick that became Ross Blacklock and elder running back David Johnson's bloated contract. Hopkins had 3 straight All-Pro seasons in Houston. David Johnson had 2 straight years of sub-700-yard seasons for the Texans. That was the answer in the last version of this episode, which again we did in 2021, and it's still true today. Hiring David Culley as their head coach in 2021 does earn an honorable mention. Houston, though, they're on a run of pretty damn good decisions, from beating the Colts with Lovie Smith to trading Deshaun Watson for a king's ransom to, most importantly, firing Jack-Off Easter Bunny and hiring DeMeco Ryans and then drafting C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson. I predict in 5 years I'm talking about a bad decision you made in the AFC Championship game. Here's another layup. I mean, come on, for the Colts, it's Anthony Richardson. You can talk about his age and his elite tools as long as you want, but the 4th overall pick in 2023 is a bust. His completion percentage constantly hovers around 50%, and he just lost his starting job to Danny fucking Dimes. Ironically, Anthony Richardson throws more dimes than Danny, but can't keep up with the Joneses on simple passes and reads. The real tragedy is that the Colts have a pretty good roster, and the right pick at quarterback could have had them at the top of the AFC South last year. Imagine Shane Steichen with Will Levis.
They try to define you.
Jacksonville hired Urban Meyer. That's it. That's the whole mistake. A man who didn't know who Aaron Donald was, kicked his kicker, and skipped the team flight to grind on strange women at his personal bar and restaurant in Ohio. 2 wins, 11 losses, and a preseason with Tim Tebow at tight end. The only positive is that his failure will make literally every Jaguars coach since look like Vince Lombardi. And they've already fired one of them. Las Vegas hired Josh McDaniels. He got 25 games, traded for Devontae Adams just to bench Derek Carr for Jarrett Stidham, which in turn sent Carr to the Saints. McDaniels kept signing washed-up Patriots like it was a retirement home. And before McDaniels came in, the players in Vegas wanted Rich Bisaccia. Mark Davis said, let's go get the guy who was universally reviled in the state of Colorado. McDaniels' biggest mistake was pissing off Derek Carr by benching him. Had McDaniels handled just that situation properly, the Raiders could have traded Derek Carr and received some solid draft capital in return. Instead, they made this choir boy so angry.
Hey, you're being an idiot, stop.
He simply waited until they were forced to release him. Lost in the shuffle of a lot of bad 2022 offseason moves, the Chargers threw $82.5 million at J.C. Jackson,
Which is a lot.
He lasted 7 games, got benched twice, tore his knee up, then got traded back to New England. The Bolts basically paid $38.5 million for 1 interception. Brandon Staley's defensive genius label didn't survive this disaster, and there was no one in the secondary to stop Trevor Lawrence in the playoffs. Ultimately, I think hiring Brandon Staley was the bigger mistake, because it led to that one. Those are 3 years Chargers fans will just never get back. The Rams. I mean, with how well Jared Goff has played, it's crazy that it's not trading Jared Goff. They've been a pretty smart team the last decade. But I'm going to say that their worst mistake was throwing a shit ton of money at 29-year-old wide receiver Allen Robinson, who had all of 339 yards in Los Angeles. Hard to find a glaring mistake for a team that got Matthew Stafford a Super Bowl ring. The Rams are probably the most underappreciated savvy franchise right now. They traded for Von Miller, who was a huge part of their Super Bowl run, and then let him turn into the Bills' biggest whiff. That's crazy. Miami, they got caught tampering with Tom Brady and Sean Payton for a few years. The NFL dropped the hammer, stripping them of a first and a third-round draft pick and fining them $2 million. And they didn't even get Brady or Payton. Vic Fangio got the hell out of there after one season and immediately coached the Eagles defense to a Super Bowl II. Minnesota's 2022 draft class was a horror show. Lewis Cine snapped his leg. Andrew Booth Jr. never saw the field. Ed Ingram was a human turnstile at guard. Brian Asamoah was invisible. 4 top 70 picks, 0 impact. Their GM, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, survived, but only because he drafted Jordan Addison the next year to bail himself out. Kwesi, great in free agency, maybe not so good at drafting. New England followed the most accomplished head coach in NFL history with Gerard Mayo rather than opening up a real coaching search, and it led to a disastrous 2024 season. Even if they got to see some nice things out of Drake May, they also spent a first-round pick on Mac Jones and signed Cam Newton to replace Tom Brady in 2020. Saying goodbye to Bill Belichick was the right move, but the succession plan was all wrong. And Belichick, holy shit, his biggest whiff was drafting Cole Strange in the first round. The Pats just cut Cole Strange, and the next offensive lineman off the board in that draft, Cam Jurgens. Never forget the savvy Rams laughing their ass off at the Cole Strange pick.
Really?
Just went.
We wasted our time watching him thinking he'd be at 104 maybe.
And in a strange twist of fate, Cole signed with the first team to fire Bill Belichick, the Browns. The Saints were left in the lurch when Sean Payton took a one-year hiatus, but rolling with Dennis Allen for 2 years and change was not the move. Allen should have been an interim head coach for a year, essentially, before they moved on to a long-term solution. They also have the most disastrous cap situation in the NFL basically every year, but that's more than one mistake. The Giants gave Kenny Golladay $72 million in 2021. Remember that shit? He scored 1 touchdown in 26 games. 1. That's $72 million for a garbage time score in his very last outing. He averaged 23 yards per game and was released 2 years in. But that still pales in comparison to the Daniel Jones contract extension, which essentially led to Saquon Barkley joining the Eagles. Imagine getting an amicable divorce and then watching your ex become the highest grossing OnlyFans model in site's history in 1 year, and she did it the classy way, not the Bonnie Blue way. Obviously, the Barkley move hurt the most immediately and publicly, but it opened the door for a true reset, and the Jackson Dart era will eventually start with some optimism. The Jets, they traded for Aaron Rodgers in 2023, but I don't fault them too much for taking a big swing at quarterback given their history and that their defense was championship caliber at the time. Letting him act as pseudo-GM, a far bigger crime in my opinion. Their most egregious move of the last half-decade, though, was spending the second overall pick of the 2021 NFL Draft on Zachy Wilson. Not a lot of good quarterbacks to choose from, but that meant they also passed up on Pat Surtain, Micah Parsons, Jamar Chase, and Penei Sewell. It's a simple reminder to draft quarterbacks who have played a good amount of college football, and it was the Zach Wilson pick that led to them taking that big ayahuasca swing on Aaron Rodgers. Sadly, Rodgers never shined, quite like Robert Saleh's head in New York. The Eagles, they just won a Super Bowl. Everything's great. But they might have had a third in their trophy case if they hadn't taken Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. It's really that simple. They probably have a much different receiving core right now, but you just can't pick Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. It's amazing they bounced back from that, honestly. Also, forgetting to pay the referees in the first Super Bowl matchup against the Chiefs. Big oversight by Howie Roseman. The Steelers made Kenny Pickett the heir to Ben Roethlisberger in 2022. 2 seasons, 24 starts, 13 TDs, 13 picks, and then they traded him to Philly for scraps. He's the most recent entry in a long line of Steelers first-round busts, but at least they tried. And since then, they've been kicking the can down the road at quarterback, settling for Band-Aids instead of ripping one off and trying to escape the trap of mediocrity. Honorable mention is their ability to evaluate wide receivers' personalities. From Antonio Brown to Chase Claypool to Deontay Johnson to George Pickens, they really have a type, and it is the bad boy. The San Francisco 49ers traded 3 first-round picks for Trey Lance in 2021. He got hurt, barely played, and was shipped off while 7th-rounder Bryce Purdy became the franchise QB. If anything, though, I have to applaud the fact that San Francisco didn't fall victim to the sunk cost fallacy and was pretty quick to admit defeat on a huge, huge swing. Finding a franchise quarterback with the very last pick in the draft after making that trade for Trey Lance is one of the craziest things I've ever seen. Seattle paid 2 first-round picks for Jamal Adams in 2020. He had 9.5 sacks in his first year, then basically became a permanent resident of the injured list. 9.5 sacks is nice, but in case you didn't know, Jamal Adams is a safety. Again, cool, but Jamal is safety. The Jets turned those picks into Garrett Wilson and Elijah Vera Tucker, while Seattle paid a premium for a blitzing safety whose game was never really applicable in the modern NFL. There are only 2 safeties in all NFL history I'd give up 2 first-round picks for: Ed Reed and Ronnie Lott. Maybe Brian Dawkins. At least when the Broncos gave up 2 first-rounders to Seattle, it was for a quarterback.
Which is a lot.
Tampa Bay spent a 2nd-round pick on Florida's Kyle Trask to become the heir apparent to Thomas Brady, who played for another 2 years in Tampa, while Trask went on to start precisely 0 games as a Buccaneer. He just got cut after this most recent preseason. The Kyle Trask pick would be a much bigger deal if they didn't bring in Baker Mayfield on a 1-year, no-risk-it, no-biscuit contract back in 2023. Mike Evans could have left, Chris Godwin could have left, Levante David could have left. The Buccaneers, they have a culture I think guys like playing for right now, and they have handled Brady's departure almost perfectly. Tennessee's general manager or executive vice president, whatever, John Robinson, thought paying receiver A.J. Brown was too steep, so he traded him to the Eagles and used the pick on Treylon Burks. Titans fans know this story. Everybody knows this story. Brown turned into a top 5 receiver in Philly. Burks turned into an oft-injured and seldom productive target with 699 yards in all of his seasons there. Robinson was fired mid-season and Burks was recently cut. A.J. Brown immediately helped the Eagles get to the Super Bowl and won it in year 3 with the Birds. That move will transcend time and was in our episode back in March about the worst trades for every team. The Titans, though, they managed to replace one bad GM with another, bringing in Rand Carthon. You had John Robinson and ignoring the fact that Mike Vrabel wanted to keep A.J. Brown. Then his replacement, Rand Carthon, fired Mike Vrabel at a time where Mike Vrabel was really the only good thing going on in Tennessee. Vrabel with Drake May or Brian Callahan with Cam Ward? Who has the better next 5 years? And finally, the Washington football team commander skins. So many to choose from for Washington. Washington was in limbo as the Dan Snyder ousting was going through its due process. Ultimately, I believe hiring Ron Rivera was their biggest mistake, and a large part of that has to do with how poorly they drafted while he was there. So it's actually every first-round pick in the Rivera era. They picked Emmanuel Forbes at number 16 in 2023. By year 2, he was benched and cut. The Rams claimed him, and the Commanders basically paid $5 million to watch Christian Gonzalez, picked right after Forbes, become a Pro Bowl corner. Jahan Dotson was their pick in 2022. He plays for the Eagles now. 2021, it was linebacker Jamin Davis, who was just cut by the Jets. And of course, Chase Young in 2020, who is not with Washington. But they got Jaden Daniels now, so none of that shit matters. Thanks for watching That's Good Sports. Please subscribe here because, well, that's just how fucking YouTube works. Do you understand? You gotta subscribe so you don't forget to watch my videos. If you forget to watch my videos, I don't make as much money. If I don't make as much money, I can't feed my family.
Coming from my favorite guy.